to see you. I'm feeling a bit lonely up here, but I can see you and you're surrounded me. How are you from London? I think we've got a bit of a sound issue, but we'll be patient and I'm sure it will come back on.
Hello?
Hi, Anne. Can you hear it? Can you say something so we can just check your mic?
Yes, I can hear you quite well.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. We're back in the room. Brilliant. Great.
Good.
How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. And I loved Emmanuel's speech and I loved your speech, Katie. Very rousing introduction.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. You're the executive vice chair at MasterCard. You're global chair of the 30% Club. Can you give us a snippet of your career journey? Because it's truly impressive.
Well, actually, I began my career as a research scientist. I was the first woman offshore on the oil and gas rigs in Britain. I then moved into international banking. I restructured Lehman during Chapter 11, and then I ended up for the last 10 years at MasterCard, which has been the pinnacle of my career. I absolutely love this company.
MasterCard's one of the biggest global sponsors. They're one of our founding members. Why does diversity and inclusion matter to a brand like MasterCard?
Look, it's hugely important to us. We are no longer living in a world where just your share price matters. You have to think about the customers you serve, the communities that you live in, and the people who work for you. And those three things have to come together and reflect each other. In our case, it's a no-brainer, for example, to think about women because 85% of the day-to-day buying decisions are made by women. So they're a hugely important part of the population as far as we're concerned. And remember that we reach 3 billion people on the planet through our network.
That's a lot of buying decision, isn't it? As women, we have more than equity then in that respect. How is diversity and inclusion linked to integrity?
Really, when you think about what message you want to deliver to the world, I think people are expecting companies to stand for something these days, to have a purpose. And we heard Emmanuel talk about that we're in quite dark times here. And I think that it's not just the political world, but it's also the corporate world that has to stand up and say, we believe in acting in a right and appropriate way and an honest way, and to deliver, the right level of service and to have people trust us that we're doing the right thing. I think that's not just true of companies, but it's true very much in the sporting world, which is why I applaud your organization.
Thank you. Thank you. From a corporate social responsibility is now, as you mentioned, Anne, more important than ever. How can we attract other global brands like MasterCard to join our efforts for SIGA? What would you say to them?
I would say that you could do it in a similar way to the 30% Club. The 30% Club started in Britain at a time there were only 12% women on boards. And we actually got together a group of CEOs and chairs and said, do you want to change the world? Do you want to change your own companies? And do you want to create something which is much better for tomorrow? And they said, yes, we do. And they pledged to go for more than 30% women at their corporate boards. Once they started to do that, they reached out to their own friends and colleagues who were also CEOs and chairs of companies and said, this is just the right thing to do. It's the decent thing to do, and we should be all in it together. And through this, we created this hugely powerful organization of something like 1,200 chairs and CEOs of the top companies in the world. And in Britain, in the last few years, we moved from 12% women on boards to almost 40% without quotas, without, anything other than aspirational targets from the people at the top.
I think that just shows the power of when you unite and join together and build that network. And certainly, we'd love to collaborate more broadly with the 30% Club in the future. You touched on the word quotas and targets. Quotas, are they a necessary evil?
Sometimes they are. I mean, we like to think that we would go for aspirational targets, because if you have a CEO or a chair that stands up and says, I want my company to change, then they usually change the culture. Whereas quotas and mandates often impose a change from outside. But if you're not really getting any change to happen, then sometimes you need to do that too.
How do we activate male chairs and CEOs around the mission to have at least 30% representation of all women on all boards and C-suites globally?
I think the way that you do it is, as I say, you set these targets, and then the 30% Club operates in different countries around the world, from Australia to Japan to Mexico. It's expanding across Latin America. And I think that you have to be very cognizant of culture when you're trying to cause change, and really get local people to want to move in that direction. And that's really how you achieve it.
What would you say, Anne, if somebody in a country says that their cultural difference is a barrier to them achieving 30%? How do we get past that?
Yes, well, I mean, I would say that we would bring in people from other countries, and certainly bring in people who are running, say, global businesses that influence the whole world, and try and have them, you know, discuss, introduce their ideas and drive that change globally. And I think in the sporting world, you know, that's a very real phenomena, because if I think about all of the things that MasterCard supports, you know, things like the Open tennis and the golf and the Rugby World Cup and the football, these all span many different geographies, and they bring people together from different countries. And I think that is the power of sport, and the power of having ambassadors in sport who can, you know, appeal to people around the world.
What can women do to help other women? We've talked about what men can do. How can we get female leaders to drive that change, like yourself?
Well, first of all, I think that it's all, I think you actually said it, Katie, because you talked about leaving a legacy. And I think it's very incumbent upon people who climb to the top of their profession, people who are perhaps the best sports people in the world, or, you know, they're a CEO, or like me, they're a vice chair, executive vice chair of their company, to say, I've climbed up the ladder and made it to the top, and now I'm going to reach down and help those people, and especially those women coming behind me, to make it an easier climb for them, to share the reasons that you're successful, and to sponsor them and to mentor them, and to put programs in place that develop them. Inside MasterCard, we've got a fantastic program that I sponsor that actually puts senior women executives on not-for-profit boards. We started rolling it out in America. We're now rolling it out in Britain. We're rolling it out in Latin America, and it'll soon move to Singapore. And the other thing that we did was, when we saw how successful that was, we said, how about we do this for Black Americans as well, match them with not-for-profit boards. That was an even more successful program. So I think the corporate world and the sporting world can come up with all sorts of ideas like this.
Fantastic initiatives. Congratulations. You mentioned about leaving a legacy and paving the way. What is your one piece of advice to the young women, like the Seeger women mentees that are tuning in around the world? What would you tell them, you know, teach them from your career?
I would say we're not on a level playing field. Let's admit that to ourselves. There isn't a single country in the world today where women have equal rights under the law as men, including our own. including Iceland, which is perhaps the most advanced. But we know we're not on a level playing field, but we can get out there and play. We can change things, and we can strive to be the best we can possibly be and reach for what you want and really go for it in life. Because life's not a rehearsal. And if you do that, whatever level you will achieve, at least you'll know that you've done your best, and you'll have a sense of self-esteem and respect.
Thank you so much, Anne. I mean, we could go on and continue this conversation. I know I've been watching the audience, everybody's nodding their heads. I don't know if you can see everybody, but thank you for your wise words. Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for participating today in the 2022 SIGA Women Summit on Female Leadership in Sport. Big round of applause to Anne.
Thank you. Take care.